Do you want to maximize your success with NCUA? Join Mark Treichel as he shares with you the insider's view on passing your exam with flying colors. The With Flying Colors podcast is sponsored by Credit Union Exam Solutions by Mark Treichel. If you would like to work directly with the Credit Union Exam Solutions team and receive support to optimize your results with NCUA so you save time and money, visit us at marktreichel.com to find out more.
Hey everyone, this is Mark Treichel with another episode of With Flying Colors. I've got two guests here today that I'm excited to chat with. I have Keith Stone, who is the CEO of the Finest Federal Credit Union and also the CEO of the New Jersey PBA Federal Credit Union, which opens its doors officially next month. And I'm excited to have Keith here. I also have Rick Mumm, who I worked with at NCUA for 35 years. And Rick also does some consulting on his own with credit unions, and he also works with me and my team on some occasions. Guys, how you doing today?
Doing good, Mark. Thank you. Good to be here.
I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Mark. It's great to be here with both you and Rick.
I'm excited to chat today. And I have you here both together because you worked together on one of those credit unions I mentioned, which was the New Jersey PBA. But before we dive into that, Keith, if you could maybe give a little bit of expand upon your background other than what I just provided there.
Well, thank you so much. Actually, if I could just backtrack a little bit, Rick, actually, we worked together on both credit unions that you mentioned, and it's a great story. Very briefly, long story short, my credit union experience started when I was attending high school in Brooklyn, New York. We had a small credit union in our cooperative apartment building. It was like the movie It's a Wonderful Life. It was a very small in-house system, open Wednesday night in the back office in the building. And I learned what it was to help people be part of something, that cooperative spirit. So that really got my credit union flames going. Fast forward, I've worked for Smith Barney, Bear Stearns, Merrill Lynch in different capacities for larger companies. I had the opportunity to be part of working with Consumers Federal Credit Union in Brooklyn, New York when I was younger, and then moved on full time. I was on that board of directors for about 12 years, was their VP for about 8 years. 2014 into 2015, we had the opportunity, myself with a group of law enforcement personnel, to charter the Finest Federal Credit Union, the credit union in New York City for the law enforcement community of New York City and New York State. Fast forward again, we built up the Finest from within 9 years to over 9,000 members, $30 million in assets. Fast forward a year and a half ago, I was approached by a group of law enforcement personnel in New Jersey. They were trying to charter a new credit union. And I had the opportunity to work with them and help charter the New Jersey State PBA Federal Credit Union, which is opening its doors next month, which is really exciting. And Mr. Rick Mumm was a very big part of both credit unions when he was with the NCUA, helping us chart the Finest, and now helping us chart the New Jersey State PBA as an independent credit union. You as well. I have to mention you, Mark, as well, in my credit union career, and especially with the Finest, as far as the great help that you gave us. And we had some concerns early on, and you were there for us, and you advised us early on, and you were a great part of our success. So I thank you for that.
Appreciate those kind words. And Rick, why don't you give a little bit of your background here before we jump into what's going on with these credit unions?
Like you said, Mark, we started, I think, on the same day. Didn't really meet until we went to our first training class in D.C. And I can remember them telling us that there had been a very mild winter. We should really enjoy it. And 2 days later, it was the biggest snowstorm they'd had in 30 years, whatever it was, and we couldn't even get into the office.
That's right. I remember that. That was a 2-week, one of the classes that was 2 weeks. And that weekend was the Super Bowl when Buffalo Bills fans, you might want to cover your ears. That was the infamous wide right call when the Bills lost one of their 4 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
So,
The hotel at Ridges. It was a great experience into getting to know NCUA.
yes, indeed. Go ahead.
But so from there, was an examiner for several years, went into the office, I eventually went into the division of insurance at working with credit unions field of membership and did that for over 26 years. I think as part of that is field of membership has come a long, long way from when we started. When I first went into insurance, a community charter, a large one was 50,000 and you had to go to the NCUA board for approval. So there was no internet, nothing. So times have really changed as far as that goes.
That's a fact. But all that corporate knowledge that you have there plays a role in you being able to help credit unions now. And you were able to, as Keith mentioned, you worked while you were at NCUA, you had a role in the Finest getting chartered. By the way, Keith, the Finest Federal Credit Union is my favorite named credit union in the country. Every time I see your post on LinkedIn with the mission that you have, and as you and I have discussed in the past, I've got family members in the profession. And so I have a soft spot in the heart for the front line, the thin blue line. And I always enjoy seeing your post on LinkedIn with the new graduates. Probably my favorite posts on LinkedIn are you talking to the new recruits and helping them get started and everything like that. But a little bit of a divergence there, but best named credit union ever, in my humble opinion. All right. So let's chat a little bit about Keith, you got approached about the New Jersey police officers. You're now, once the doors open soon, you'll be the CEO of both these credit unions. But talk a little bit about that credit union, what it's striving to achieve, how this all came together, and then we can maybe pivot into how you and Rick worked together to get this done in what I understand was record time.
So, yeah, thank you for mentioning that, Mark, and also thank you for acknowledging the Finest. We're proud of our name. As far as New Jersey State PBA goes, the field of membership will be for the New Jersey State Police Benevolent Association. So there's approximately 60,000 individuals who are part of the New Jersey State PBA who are eligible to join. Their family members with them will be eligible to join. So the credit union was chartered to benefit the PBA members. So the PBA itself provides a lot of great financial wellness, all kinds of different economic wellness, all kinds of health benefits. So it's just the law enforcement community. I'm a civilian. I was never an officer. I was never part of officially the law enforcement world, but especially for the past 13 years, I bleed blue. The law enforcement community deserves better. There's always a better chance when a law enforcement personnel leaves for work that they're not coming home to their family. Just a better chance than any other occupation. Because of that, they deserve better for what they do for our communities. They deserve better. So deserve better means the credit union philosophy. So higher rates on savings, lower rates on loans, lower or no fees. In addition, the service. So the typical institution getting back to you during regular banking hours, we have to do better. Our members deserve better. So that's going to be part of the business model as well, especially since a lot of our field of membership, they don't work your standard hours. They work around the clock. They need someone to get back to them before 9 o'clock in the morning, after 5 o'clock at night. So we are striving to provide the best services for our membership because they deserve it. Otherwise, we're going to be like everyone else, and we're not going to be accepting mediocrity. We have to be better. If I could jump into, so I was approached a year and a half, almost 2 years ago by officials with the New Jersey State PBA. They were trying to get this credit union chartered. They were having some difficulties. We picked up the reins. We had a good team. My team specifically included Mr. Rick Mumm on the call with us today. Rick's and your experience, Rick's experience is invaluable as far as working with the NCUA, working within the timeframes, working within the philosophies that's expected. So we have a new chartering process. As of about 2 years ago, I think the new chartering process went into effect, something like that. 3 phases. Rick, I can't begin to tell you how great he was as far as working together with myself, as far as putting together the backbone of what needed to get done, primarily the business plan. It is not easy chartering a new credit union, a new institution. The NCUA still is pretty stringent, and they need to be as far as putting the final stamp of approval on a credit union. And from conversations we had, from the work put into it, from the numbers, from the pro formas, the business plan, the direction of just getting this thing done in a timely manner. I couldn't recommend anyone better than Rick as far as getting the help needed in chartering a credit union.
Very good. Very good. And Rick, Rick, speak a little bit to what Keith just said there. What I often say is NCUA has rules and regulations that you look at the words, and in someone who wants to charter a credit union, like in this example, will look at those words, and in the English language, they mean a particular thing. And Rick, you and I know that in the NCUA language, they mean what it means in the English language, but there's also this body of work of what those words actually mean to the regulator. And so putting together the field membership package, putting together the support for how it can survive, putting together all those different pieces along that journey, I believe you provide some context to your clients, and did in this instance. But could you go into a little bit process of New Jersey State Policeman's Credit Union and how because of the work that Keith had done, maybe on the Finest, and then was able to capitalize into having that as background, and then your background, were able to get this moving in record time once it was submitted.
Yeah. First, thank you, Keith. I appreciate all those very kind words. And I'll put a check in the mail for that. Thank you.
They're all true. They're all true, Rick.
Thanks. Okay. I really appreciate that. Yes. And you're absolutely right, Mark. Working with Keith and on the New Jersey, in a lot of ways, was very eye-opening, because I'd chatted half a dozen or so credit unions, with the Finest being one of them, while I was at NCUA. You always see it from NCUA's side of the table, and there's a lot of work, there's a lot to do. But then when you sit on the other side of the table, it's, oh my God, they're asking for the same thing 3-4 different ways. And it's amazing anyone gets chartered sometimes the way they ask the questions. But Keith approached me, they had their application, and they were ready to turn it in to NCUA, because I think Keith's first words to me was, we were going to submit it Friday, and this was the first of the week. We just had to take one little last look at it before we submitted and make sure we didn't miss anything. And I took a look at it, and it wasn't even close. I'm not sure who had done it, and I don't know that it mattered, but they didn't really address everything. And I told Keith, this isn't close, it needs work. And he said we'd work together at the Finest. I was familiar with them, and that really helps. And what was really great about Keith is he knows credit unions. He's been in credit unions, and he'd gone through the process too. One of the things with chartering a new credit union is a lot of the people chartering one, they're very smart, very intelligent. They know what they're doing, but like you said, there's English and there's NCUA speak, there's chartering manual speak. And when you're trying to help somebody that doesn't understand that, it does slow the process down. That's just human nature. But with Keith, part of the reason we could go as fast as we did is he speaks the language, he understood it. If I said I needed this, he knew what I was talking about. He didn't have to go through any kind of learning to explain it or whatever. It was like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I'll get it to you. After I told him about the application, he said, okay, I'll give it a shot. And he did. And his was much, much better, much better. But it was still needed work. And which is not anything against Keith. It's just, again, you've got the chartering manual speak. NCUA needs what it needs in the way it wants. And unless you that and understand it, I've never had any credit union, whether it's a new charter, a community charter, whatever it was, give NCUA what it needed per the chartering manual to get it done without going back to them or supplementing it. So that was That's very common. I've never seen anybody give it to us or give it to NCUA while I was there in the manner which they needed. So I told Keith it was much better. It still needed a little. And then at that point, he just asked me to do it. And so I sure and put the Apple, worked with Keith very close, supplementing the information he already had. At this point, we got to talk about the group too, the New Jersey Benevolence. They were fantastic. I didn't have any direct interaction with them, but I'd contact Keith and say, hey, I need this from the group. And Keith would talk to the group and they'd have it back, in a few days or very quickly too. So I think to be very successful and to do it as fast as we were able to do it is everybody has to be on the same page and working together. And I think in this instance, everybody was. The group was fantastic, very helpful. Working with Keith was amazing. I'd worked with him on the Finest, but he came in toward the end. He wasn't there the whole time. We worked together enough so that I knew who he was. He knew who I was. We knew that we didn't work closely at the New Jersey. We did work very close, and I think it worked out very well. We got what we needed when we needed it and got a very successful outcome.
Yeah, very much so. And Keith, I'm going to let you comment 1 second, but one thing that comes to mind when Rick is talking about that is the concept of form and substance, right? I remember when I was delivering something, whether it was to the NCUA board or elsewhere, there's the substance of what needs to be said, and then it needs to be said in a way that makes it easy for the reviewer, whether that's the NCUA board or whether that's Cure looking at a package, because oftentimes you can look at the chartering manual or you can look at something that I'm delivering to the NCUA board and you can say, okay, I put this sentence in here which addresses that. But sometimes whether it's whipping a dead horse or putting it in a chart where the chart says you need to have these 5 things, boom, boom. And on the right, you go, this is on page 12 and this is on page 15 and this is on page 18, making it easier for the reviewer to see that everything is there is one of the arts of working within the walls of NCUA. And I think that probably played a role in Rick massaging it into a form that would look familiar to those within NCUA, because the facts can be there, but if you make it hard for them to find, making it easy, which is the form and substance for them to find it, sometimes saves a ton of time.
You're absolutely right, Mark. You hit the nail right on the head, because there's a lot of times you can get a package and everything's there. They did address it, but there's no logical order to it. It's here, there, everywhere, and you're hunting and pecking, and you just overlook it.
Right. You can read it 2 times and miss that one sentence. But General Keith, what are your thoughts on this kind of discussion as far as how that process?
So touching on this, I didn't mention prior, and you both, I couldn't agree more as far as speaking the language, as far as having someone to help interpret what's needed, what's required. March 2017, I had the opportunity to testify at the Subcommittee on Financial Institutions and Consumer Credit before Congress on behalf of NAFCU. So that was going way back. Wow, March of 17. Anyway, the subject was ending the de novo drought and examining the application process for de novo institutions. And I was there were a couple of banks there, but there weren't any recently chartered banks. And I received the call because Lutheran Federal Credit Union was the chartered recently before us. But there was some bad weather, inclement weather. Their CEO was unable to make it. And I received a call. Do I want to participate? And I definitely did. And I took that opportunity. But we were talking about the current, at that time, 2017 and prior, the NCUA chartering process, which was, it was perceived as a bit cumbersome. It wasn't exactly streamlined to where it is today. I think it's a lot better today. And we went through those points in my hearing, in my testimony. Today, fast forward, I think the process is a lot clearer. But even with that, so even having the 3 phases that we have now, you need really, it takes someone with the ear, with the knowledge to be able to decipher exactly what in this case, the NCUA is looking for, to break it down, someone who speaks the language. And sometimes as individuals, we make things more complicated than they need to be. If you just simplify exactly what's being asked for, put it in the order that it's being asked for, it makes so much sense. And that's what Rick touched upon and you touched upon. Rick was really able just to make it really simple, but exactly what was needed to fine tune the items that the NCUA was looking for in order to charter a new federal credit union. And at the end, it all makes so much sense when you're looking at the package. But someone, especially if you don't have the experience and you're looking at all of these items needed beforehand, it could definitely seem overwhelming.
Which plays into maybe part of the reason there's not a lot of new charters. So hopefully, if there's a group out there that stumbles across this podcast, at the end, I'll give some contact information so they can reach out to both of you to learn from what you learned in this process. We talked about the 3 different phases, but when I put my old regional director hat on, when a credit union was going to come new into the region, you're wanting to make sure, like other credit unions, it operates in a safe and sound manner. And one of the ways that you can operate in a safe and sound manner is obviously having a good team ready to run the institution. But the concept of having some reserves in place and some donations in place so that you're not starting with zero capital. Keith, can you speak to the importance of that, the process of that, the support you maybe had at either or both of the credit unions, and then maybe we can pivot to Rick.
So you can't start, as you mentioned, it's not easy to start a new federal credit union. So you need a proof of concept and you need the capital to start it. Without those two, it's just not going to happen. The proof of concept that you touched upon, you need a certain group of people, the subscribers of the credit union need to have an affinity towards a group. So they need to have a reason why they want to start this credit union. They want to work together. A certain group of people, organizations, or someone needs certain financial services that they're not receiving now. And then you have to justify that proof of concept to the NCUA. Secondly, and probably more importantly and harder to get, is where's the money coming from? It's not an investment. It's not a loan. And it's basically money that certain entities, or it could be any entity, needs to put together in order to start this mission to help this group of people. As far as the Finest goes, there was an insurance company we were working with that was able to help support the cause in the beginning, and it's never enough. So as far as within the Finest, if we had $2.5 million to start, it's very difficult because, as any new organization is, in the beginning years, in the beginning months, you just have losses. So it takes a while to build up the income. And at the same time, as you said, you need to provide the safety and soundness. You need to have the right processes in place. You need to follow all of the interagency guidelines, all the NCUA guidelines, and that all costs money. So where does the money come from? It comes from your initial capital. At the same time, you have to pay people, competent people. If you're going to have a viable credit union, you need the people in place to run this, and that costs money and benefits, and it's really difficult to do. As far as New Jersey State PBA goes, we had within the PBA, there was an organization that was to help support the cause. They had monies available to help promote and benefit their field of membership, the PBA members. Without that, it's virtually impossible to do. So if you don't have the right people in place, now we do have within the New Jersey State Credit Union, we have a credit union service agreement with the Finest to provide some of the back office. So we use economies of scale. So if we at New Jersey State PBA Federal Credit Union need to get another compliance officer, an operations VP, a loan officer, or this or that, it costs a lot of money and it's a drain to your starting. And that's why as well, there's not many new institutions because it's very difficult to do. If more organizations can team up and provide these shared services for each other and have these agreements in place, it works. Works for us as well. We're on the same core processing system, CU Answers, our 2 law enforcement credit unions. So we're going to be able to share some of the duties, share some of the jobs in order to mitigate the expenses that goes into all of those payrolls, human resources, benefits, all of that.
Fantastic. That's a great summary, a great primer for someone out there again who's listening saying, hey, how do I get from A to Z? That capital is a big part of that equation. Rick, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, everything Keith said, I agree with 100%. You definitely have to have a group that really believes in the credit union and wants it. And the other big stumbling block, just like he said, is the money. Is what I think people don't necessarily understand is NCUA, the insurance fund, is an insurance company. They are on the hook for any losses. Any insurance company, they underwrite the risk. And that risk underwriting is the money from the group. Is they have to put their skin in the game, so to speak, and eat some of the risk before it hits the insurance fund. And that is one of the big stumbling blocks to more credit unions getting chartered is they just don't have the funds or can't raise the funds to put their skin in the game, so to speak. Because, the insurance fund is the federal government, but it is an insurance fund, and its job is to underwrite risk and not to take losses, just like any other big insurance company advertised on TV at any given point in time. And that's the huge stumbling block is the money to put up to cover their share of the risk. And the other part is having a good group and a reason for chartering. And the PBA had all of that. They had the group, they had the money. So it all worked out well.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. It reminds me of an old joke Steve Martin used to say. He says, he had advice on how to become a millionaire. First, you get $1 million. So how do you become a credit union? First, you get somebody to commit some capital so that you can fulfill your vision.
I was funny you say that joke. I heard it a little differently is how do you become a millionaire? You get $2 million and invest in a business and pick any big city you want. And when you're all said and done, you have $1 million left.
$1 million left. Very good. Very good. And Keith, you mentioned something, the shared service concept, the fact that you can leverage on what you have. There's pockets of that around the country, but you're able to leverage those economies of scale, which I think with the similarities of the field membership, I think that it's a nice natural fit for that. That's a point that if someone's looking to charter, finding someone that they can have a relationship with, whether it's a mentor or where it's official, where you have the contracts, is a great way to approach it. So Keith, any other things going on in your world that, other than these two institutions that you want to chat about?
In my spare time, I've been helping a third credit union, the Urban Empowerment Federal Credit Union. They used to be the NUL, National Urban League, small credit union that was chartered in the 70s, really hasn't done a lot as far as building up their field of membership, increasing their field of membership, building up their services, really plain vanilla grassroots credit union that is converting onto CU Answers. I was asked if I could help out as far as converting them onto CU Answers, working with them to creating different products and services, possibly helping them increase their field of membership, increasing their footprint. I love the credit union world. It's from soup to nuts. It's what I do. I always tell everyone I have 4 children, my wife, I love them to death. And right after that is the credit unions. We get to help so many different people, and so many people need the help, especially in today's economy. It's worth stressing. We have different law enforcement personnel that make very good, stable salaries, W-2 salaries, and they can't pay their rent. They can't pay their car payment. They can't pay their mortgage. And expenses are going through the roof. They have nowhere to reach. They're getting held up by predatory lenders at 30, 40, 50%. The credit union charges a very reasonable rate for our interest rate. We help everyone right now at the Finest. We don't turn anyone down. We don't deny any loans. We might offer them a little less, but we help them as quick as possible, as much as possible. New recruits. So we have new recruits starting off in the NYPD. As early as July 5th, I stood before 650 new recruits at the NYPD Academy. we're able to offer them up to $5,000 for a small unsecured loan for their equipment. And I tell them 3 reasons why they take out a loan: to help to pay for their equipment, because in New York City does not help them pay for all of their equipment. They have about $2,200 that they have to come up with on their own. So you need to pay for your equipment. You need to pay off high interest rate credit card debt, or you need to build up your credit if you don't have good credit or if you have limited credit. Otherwise, I stress, do not take out a loan. Additional debt is not. These loans start at 4.75% that we offer these new recruits. So we certainly are doing the right thing for them. We process them as quickly as possible. So we could take in 200 loan applications within 4 business days. These recruits have the funds in their primary account, sometimes, which is not the finest, but that's the quickest way to get them the funds so they could pay for their equipment or anything else they need. We're all in. So I give out my cell phone number to these recruits and let them, they call me, they text me, we get back to them. And then the same philosophies going over into New Jersey State PBA Federal Credit Union. We don't know any other way to do it. If we do it, if we're like everyone else, if we get back to everyone during regular business hours, if we offer the same products, the same service, why start a new credit union?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up speech you give to the new recruits, because I was going to ask you about it and you pivoted into it because of the things that they have to pay for right out of the gate, just so they can, the equipment that they need to get just so that they can go do their job. It's sad that they have to do that, but it's fabulous that you're there to give them a cost-effective manner in which to achieve that, so they can start building that American dream in such an important role in society. So that's just fantastic.
Thank you, Mark. In addition, in today's climate, sometimes the law enforcement world isn't perceived as our friends anymore, and they have some hostility that certain law enforcement entities enter into in their daily job. The least we could do as their financial institution, the credit union for the law enforcement personnel, is help them, is do better, is give them a hand, is get back to them when we say we're going to get back to them, help them when we say we're going to help them. And quite honestly, that's what I get paid to do. And that's what we do.
It's a noble profession. Credit unions are noble. And what you do is even noble squared, multiples of that, the role that you play for helping the finest. And now the folks in New Jersey, kudos to you, Keith.
Thank you, Mark.
It's just fantastic.
It's always an honor and privilege what I do. I get to do this. So every day I wake up, I have to remind myself, I get to do this stuff. I have the ability to help somebody. And those aren't just words. It's a mantra I live by.
Yeah, I can tell. This has been a lot of fun, guys. So if someone listening wants to reach out to you, Keith, what's the best way for someone who's inspired by what you said here today to reach you?
Call me or text me at 646-661-1331.
Fantastic. And I'll put that in the show notes when this goes live. And Rick, if someone is wanting to touch base with you about how you might be able to help a group do what Keith has done here to get a credit union chartered, what's the best way for them to reach you?
By email Mark at rick@rcuservices.com, and that's RCUSERVICES, all one word, .com.
Very good. Thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate your time and what you're doing for law enforcement and these credit unions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, as well. And Rick, always great seeing you, speaking with you guys. I really appreciate both of you. Thank you.
You got it. And listeners, I want to thank you for listening. I hope you'll listen to it again soon. This is Mark Treichel signing off with Flying Colors.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of With Flying Colors. Subscribe on your favorite podcast app to hear future episodes where subject matter experts of all varieties will provide tips on how to achieve success with NCUA. If you would like to learn more about how we assist credit unions, check out our services at marktreichel.com.